So, one of the fun things is to go back and look at what Brexiteers were saying prior to 2016, because there's a lot of very big Brexiteers from Nigel Farage, Daniel Hannan, Boris Johnson, you name them, all have these very, very bizarre worldviews of what they thought Brexit would be. But one of the common features, and even now, even of course Brexit itself, seen during 2016 and post, was the idea that once we'd left, we could just completely ignore Europe. Like Europe just wouldn't matter. And especially the Russian invasion of Ukraine has shown actually no, Britain needs to be a part of Europe more now so than ever. And the idea of again pulling out of all this stuff, especially security agreements with Brussels, has backfired on them completely, because the original idea of Brexiteer thinking was in a nutshell was the whole idea of we left the EU, we'd pull up the anchor, and then we'd sail out somewhere into like the Indo-Pacific, and it'd be all be fantastic and amazing. It'd all be wonderful. We'd be, drinking mojitos in the shining golden sunlit uplands. Yeah, it hasn't worked out that way at all. In fact, you had a Brexit voting author of the Telegraph on the BBC said very recently that the whole idea of the Brexit era thinking was not only wrong, but morally wrong as well. And I've been saying for a while there's going to be a confrontation between these two parties about Brexit in the Conservative Party. And I think once Boris Johnson goes, or shall we say when he goes, we're going to see that in full display. So, as always, thank you very much for those people for watching and tuning in right now. Like I say, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, there are YouTube membership opens as well down below. So let's go jumping into this. So this comes from The Guardian with the title of The Guardian View on EU-UK Relations, saying that war requires a reset. In February of 2018, the British Foreign Secretary declared, "It makes sense for us to continue to be intimately involved with European foreign and security policy." But when he became Prime Minister, he took the foreign and security policy cooperation off the table in the Brexit negotiations. Inconsistently is it not rare in Boris Johnson's record. Obviously, for 2 years before that, in a 2018 speech during the referendum campaign, he was singing a very different tune, blaming the EU's association agreement with Ukraine for provoking Russia's annexation of Crimea. And of course, Mr. Johnson claimed that Brussels was even meddling beyond its competence and could only cause confusion. Mr. Johnson then dropped the formal partnership with the EU on security issues in pursuit of a clean Brexit, an arm's-length relationship based on trade in goods and not much else. The official foreign policy doctrine was global Britain, with no special interest in Europe. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has now shown that approach to be a pretty and a futile suggestion. Vladimir Putin's military aggression has landed on one country, but his strategic hostility is directed towards two institutions that have historically underpinned democracy in Europe, NATO and the EU. The UK's commitment to the former is unbending, which is often cited by Brexiteers as proof of a European commitment that doesn't have to be channeled through Brussels. That is true up to a point. Brexit has not stopped the UK being proactive in support of Ukraine. British suspicion of Russian motives and readiness to turn to solidarity with Poland and the Baltics into military aid has gone further than most EU member states, but it has been vindicated by events. UK military capability, matched only by France on the continent, will always be a vital asset to the whole of Europe. By contrast, on sanctions against Mr. Putin's cronies, the EU has moved faster than Britain, in part because of the relevant laws were a mess post-Brexit. This is not to romanticize the European response or to overstate the continental unity. An EU summit on Vilnius on Thursday meant to discuss the decisive steps towards reinforcing sovereignty, a Europe with an explicit strategy to reduce dependency on Russian oil energy exports. How that is done in practice and what timetable is not easy to agree with some states. Germany, the biggest among them, obviously the heaviest reliant on Russian gas. That in turn relies on a question about the transition will be funded, which reopened the very decisions over the financial integration that were papered over the first days of the crisis. Those issues will get harder as still the economic cost for maintaining the political and military solidarity with Ukraine rises. The populists in the EU states who once openly admired Mr. Putin have now distanced themselves from this butchery and not only sustained but embraced illiberal puritanism. The European project has been given momentum in reaction to the Russian aggression, but the direction is not clear. Britain is being intimately bound to Europe's economically and security concerns as a huge stake in the outcome of that discussion. But it has surrendered its seat at the table where it all happens. That was a mistake, and it cannot be reversed, but it must be mitigated. There is no great national appetite for reigniting the Brexit argument that ranged from 2016 and onwards, but it should also be possible to recognise that the world has changed enough to drop the delusional Eurosceptic mythologies that characterise those very arguments. For the foreseeable future, British interests will be in an institutional partnership with the EU on the level of foreign and security policy. Mr. Johnson was right about that once when he took a wrong turn. Now, that will be a very auspicious time to try and correct that course. And ironically, this is something we brought up not too long ago. The whole idea of security partnerships and other partnerships within, to do with Brexit. But again, this was all the pursuit in the idea of a clean Brexit. We cannot be a part of anything that is European, heaven forbid. But it's not just this on like security issues. There's the whole issue of, again, energy needs to be a European address. It's not a single thing that a single country can address. It needs to be things like Erasmus as well. Again, a very good idea and scheme. The refugee crisis that is probably going to hit needs to be a European addressed issue. It can't be solely addressed by a single country. It needs to be, again, a European-wide take on it. And for the fact that repeating what was said in that message, which I think is the biggest takeaway, and I think this is what a lot of MPs and diplomats in the UK are going to be suddenly realizing, oh, we no longer have a seat at the table anymore in these discussions. And I think there's going to be a realization of that, as we've said before, and a lot of, so we say, the Tory MPs are not going to be happy, especially when they said, we hold all the cards, we are going to be amazing at all this, post-Brexit stuff, not really turning out to be true. And we have seen some of that happen already. So this is almost certainly, as we said, sooner or later, a returning back to Europe, slowly but steadily. This will happen. It was always going to happen. We always said it was going to happen. And this just proves once again that the Eurosceptics were always wrong about the saying about Brussels, that it's all bad and all terrible. But when we come together and cooperate on these things, we can solve these problems. Yes, there's going to be disagreements. There's disagreements in Parliament right now about how to solve very different issues. That's no different to what goes on in Brussels. Again, nothing a good discussion can solve. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, the YouTube memberships are open as well. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all